Let's talk Onimusha, Way of the Sword on the Nintendo Switch 2. I was wondering how good or not this version of the game would be, but to my surprise, it actually ended up being pretty good. We're going to go over a review, essentially, of the demo when it comes to how the demo was constructed, of course. We have the presentation, graphics, sound, music, design, everything, gameplay, bosses. I played through a lot of the demo. I have some thoughts on everything and all aspects of the Switch 2 version of it. I have seen and played a bit of the PlayStation 5 demo, so I will be making a few comparisons because Capcom had a very interesting, I would say, comment on the Switch 2 version of the game not too long ago. In an interview, they talked about how Capcom said that you might not be able to feel the difference between the PS5 version and the Nintendo Switch 2 version. And of course, it's a little bit exaggerated. Some people might not. The PS5 version is absolutely better when it comes to the graphics and when it comes to the frame rate and all of that. But I'm happy to report that the Switch 2 version of the game, once you tweak a few things, which we're going to talk about here, is actually a pretty good way of playing the game. But before we continue, we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2 at 140,000 subscribers or on September 1st, whichever comes first. Subscribe, like, comment. The winner will be chosen at random, and it's a worldwide giveaway. Thanks, peeps. Okay, so the demo is out now, at least here in the US. I did see some people say that the demo might not be available in Europe, but the demo's coming pretty much everywhere, so hang tight if you don't see it yet, but it should be everywhere at this point. You can go download the demo for free. Onimusha, Way of the Sword. You just go on the eShop, you can download it, and it's right there. And it's not that big of a demo. It doesn't take up too much space when it comes to that, but I wanted to go over everything here. Let's start with the presentation and the graphics. I think that this is the thing that's kind of tripping people up at first because for some reason, the default settings for this game are terrible. And based on what TV you have, what type of HDR you have, what type of everything when it comes to the quality of your TV, HDR can be really good for Onimusha Way of the Sword on Switch 2, or it can be really bad. I got so many different reports from people out there saying, man, this looks terrible. I had to turn it off and all of this other stuff. So I played with it on my LG big, I have like a 50, 60 inch LG CX TV OLED. I used it on, I tuned everything. And then for my footage that you guys are seeing right now, which is my work switch that's connected to my 27-inch MSI monitor that I have, OLED monitor on my PC through my capture card, I turned off HDR because HDR doesn't work well with my capture card and all that. It just makes things look all funky whenever I capture the footage, so I turned it off. So I do have a perspective of the HDR on and the HDR off, and definitely the HDR on, when fine-tuned, looks better, in my opinion, on the Switch 2 than when it's not on. However, when I captured this footage, it still looked really good. I still think it looked good. It just looked a little bit more muted compared to when I was playing on my LG OLED. You also have to take into consideration that the size of the TV, it's blown up a little bit more on my Switch 2 when I'm playing on my LG CX because of the size, whereas the MSI monitor, much smaller, so it's harder to see some of the imperfections when it comes to the max resolution that this game is offering, which is probably like around 1080p or so or something like that. So there's some concessions when it comes down to that, but once you fine tune it to whatever display or to whatever your TV or your monitor is doing, it actually looks okay. It looks solid because the default settings just aren't good. Now, another thing is that you've got to take off the 30 FPS cap. Now, I saw some people saying, oh, well, it's fixed 30 FPS. You got to do that because it's unstable when you do the uncapped. I don't think it looks great when it has the 30 FPS cap on there. I think that removing that 30 FPS cap is better. It feels better to play. It does not feel as laggy. It looks better in motion. There's just something with that 30 FPS cap. And then when you have the uncapped, that is just better when it comes to the gameplay for this game in particular. Now, I don't know what frame rate it's running at, whether that's going to be like 40 FPS or that's going to be something. I know that they said it's going to be around there, but we have to wait for Digital Foundry. Maybe it's worse. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a bit higher. Maybe it's a bit lower when it comes to what they're saying there. Maybe it's fluctuating. But all I know is that 30 FPS cap, that fixed rate, is not great. Now, here's the thing. If you play in portable mode, which I did play in portable mode for Onimusha Way of the Sword, I think that the 40 FPS or whatever it is with the VRR works. Now, I know that Nintendo doesn't have like docked VRR or whatever. They don't have that yet, but in my experience, at least, when I was playing docked, it felt just as smooth, even though it doesn't support the VRR or whatever. It felt just as smooth as playing docked as it did in portable. So once again, we need to wait for maybe the Digital Foundry stuff, the full release of the game, the updates and all that, because I know that, for example, Resident Evil Requiem, that got some patches. At first, didn't play quite as good. It was good. It was solid, but then they actually made some patches to make it better afterwards. So we'll see if there's like a day one patch or something like that for the Switch 2 version of Onimusha Way of the Sword. But once you get everything all set up, the presentation and the graphics look great. There's a ton of options to pick from. There's a lot of quality of life stuff that you can do. There's a lot of different things that you can customize and set in the game. So you can kind of fine tune it to make sure that it looks as good as possible on whatever display that you are playing on. Graphically, it looks awesome too. It looked real crunchy, the graphics first. Like, it's not as good as PS5, of course, but with those default settings, it looked real crunchy. Did not look great at first, looked washed out on Switch 2, but once you tweak that up, the graphics are actually really nice in the game. They look really good. I think the character model is great. I think the voice acting is awesome. I was playing on Japanese voice acting with English subtitles, and I think that needs to be the way to play the game, unless you have to hear everything in English, or maybe your reading isn't that great when it comes to things, or you just get distracted by having a different language and having to look down to kind of read the subtitles. But man, the Japanese voice acting, that is the way the game was meant to be played. Like, I listened to the English voice acting through like the trailers and different things and from what other people have shown, but the Japanese voice acting, it just was awesome. It really just made the, I would say, experience feel authentic.
黒魂。
この地に残る記憶が正気の塊と化したものです。清水寺を浄化するためにはこの光景の根源を突き止める必要があります。
おい小手女、ごたくはいい。目が覚めたんなら俺の質問に。
嫌です。
嫌ってお前。ふざけるな。
So I love that about the presentation. They really did a great job with the character models, and they really did a great job with the voice acting and the direction of it. It really feels really cool to hear that. So for me, that's going to be something that I do. Now let's talk about sound, music, and the design of the game. So far, so good. I mean, this is a traditional PS2 style, like action adventure RPG type of game. It's not some type of open world Souls game or some of the newer designs like the Mortal Shell 2 or some of the stuff that they're doing. They are doing old school with some pretty cool things in there when it comes to the sound design, when it comes to the music, when it comes to the levels and layouts. Now, there might be some more levels that kind of maybe open up a little bit more later as you get further into the game and other things, but the design and the music and the sound kind of all go hand in hand. It feels absolutely exquisite to cleave through enemies in a very satisfying way from the counters and the different stuff that we're going to talk about with the gameplay and all that. And it just feels great. It sounds great. It looks great. And the design to me is reminiscent of what we played back in the day. So I'm really loving what they're doing here with the direction of the audio and everything. The surround sound was really good. I think that that was awesome too. It felt like the traditional Japanese samurai type of music, and I would say setup for all of that. So I have no complaints there as well. Now the gameplay, bosses, options, let's talk about this. This is the meat and potatoes. This is what everybody is looking out for. Is this game good enough to be a Game of the Year candidate? Well, maybe. It's actually really solid. I love the gameplay options in here. There's a lot of cool stuff. So the gameplay here is probably one of the best things, if not the best thing about it, because you have this counter system that works really well. So as soon as the enemy kind of comes up, and sometimes they kind of just wait around a little bit, but it's fun to kind of have them wait. They attack you, you parry it, which there's a pretty generous window for the parry, and then that gets you the upper hand right away. You just kind of deflect their sword and you can hit them with like a finisher kill blow type of move. But there's various types. You have like a dodge that you can do. You also have a deflect where you can kind of shoot back arrows or shoot back magic blobs that people shoot at you, hit it right back to them. There's environmental different things in the environment that you can use to take down groups of enemies in different places. So that was really cool. And I felt that that was probably one of the best things about the game. When you combine the sound and the music and the design of it, you combine that with the actual gameplay of cleaving people and the smooth controls, very responsive, even not running at a locked 60 FPS. I felt that the Switch 2 version is at least something. Once you remove that 30 FPS cap, remove that fixed 30 FPS, in my opinion at least. I played it and I felt like, man, this is actually pretty good in comparison. Not as good, but not bad in comparison when it comes to the gameplay. I felt very smooth. I felt like everything was timing up correctly. I liked the absorbing the different souls with your Onimusha gauntlet. Now, there's a story in there and all that, which I'm not spending too much time on because, of course, the full release, we can talk about that. But there's the Onimusha gauntlet that kind of talks to you and tells you different things, and you can absorb anytime that you like do damage and you like kill an enemy, you can absorb red souls from them, which can give you upgrade abilities and give you ability to buy different things and certain stuff. So I think that's pretty cool. Plus, like, stamina gauges, there's that in the game to where you can deplete their stamina instantly if you do certain types of counters. So there's a variety of different counters. There's a bunch of different finishers that are cool depending on sneaking up on them or doing something different. And I just really like that about the gameplay aspect. It just feels fun to play. There was 2 difficulty levels from the demo, at least, where you have the story, then you have like the regular mode, and I definitely want to see if there's a harder mode in the game, because sometimes those enemies are just standing around a little bit too much. You just mash. A lot of times the enemies are going to just like block you and maybe wear your stamina out and all of that, or put you in a bad spot to where somebody else can come and hit you. But I definitely want to see like a harder difficulty level from the very beginning. I'm hoping that they have something there for us, because I think that the default difficulty level is just going to be too easy for me, at least. So I'm hoping that they have something else there. But I enjoyed my time when it comes to the gameplay of it. Now, the bosses, I won't ruin everything from the demo, but there is one boss that you encounter. There's like a couple sub bosses or like smaller bosses, and then there's like a big boss that you encounter, maybe even more. And I had a lot of fun with that. It's a really slender, thin guy that seems deranged, but once again, the voice acting and everything is on point. And I fought him and he slashed me down once at first, just because I mistimed a number of different moves that he had. But you really have to kind of put together everything that you've learned up until that point to fight that boss. And I thought that it was pretty cool. You know, you have plenty of space to kind of maneuver and go around. You really have to just time the attacks. He does like a flying kick, time that up correctly. He has kind of like a kind of dodge in and then shift over, try to go back around you, then like a quick slice, gotta dodge that. He has like a grab, you gotta press the A button. That's also a counter for grabs right before like a white kind of like flashing type of stuff that they come at you. Got to go ahead and dodge that too, or counter or parry that. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of different stuff in here that I felt that was very fun to kind of play. And with all the numerous options that you have for the game itself, just like when it comes to the styles of play and of just, of course, with the presentation and everything, I think that this really puts together one of the stronger action adventure games on the Nintendo Switch 2. So I want to talk about this because I think that you see Capcom just in general, right? They put out really good stuff. Like their RE engine has been one of the best, if not the best, third-party engines that I've ever seen. And it works so well with the Nintendo Switch 2. It's like it's in tune, it's in sync with the Switch 2 to where you see other developers having lots of issues with their Switch 2 versions. But with the RE engine, they've done a great job just being able to maximize every inch so far that the Nintendo Switch 2 has been able to offer for them. So I think that it's awesome, and this game is no exception to that. I want to see how varied it gets though. I talked about like some of the, I would say, difficulty. I want to see what other types of enemies they introduce. I want to see what other types of bosses they have. There's some like extra and there's some like side paths that you can go to, extracurricular type of stuff that you can get into as well. I think that this game will be built probably for replay value too, when it comes to unlocking different things or finding different stuff that you missed on the first playthrough. So I do think that there will be the value in this game from what I've played so far. We still have to wait for like the full release and everything, but this is a triumphant return for Onimusha. This game has been gone. This franchise has not been here with a new release in decades, and they've come back incredibly strong here on all platforms, even with the Nintendo Switch 2. So very excited when it comes to what they've been able to offer here. And I'm looking forward to just kind of seeing the full release. I will be picking it up. I'll probably get a review copy of the game. Not sure if I'll get that on PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo Switch 2 for right now, but I'll probably be picking that up one way or another. I think I have to play through the game on Nintendo Switch 2 to give you guys more of my thoughts on the final release. And then, of course, I'll be playing on PlayStation 5, and I'll be seeing, I have a PS5 Pro, so I'll be playing on PS5 Pro, and I'll be seeing how that is. And this is why they need to do, like, the only thing that I would say is that they need to get the cross save going. I don't know how Capcom does not have cross save going right now. They really need to get that, because I think that with all of these great Switch 2 versions of games that they have, having a cross save option would literally encourage the people that have PS5 and Switch 2 to buy both faster. So Capcom, if you're listening, please work on cross save when it comes to your platforms. At least with Switch 2, PS5, work on cross save, because man, that would really make things a lot better if they had it. But what do you think of Onimusha Way of the Sword and the demo? Have you checked it out? What do you think of the gameplay footage of the Switch 2 version, or just the game in general? Let me know in the comment section below. Alright peeps, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace!